Ahoy, hoy, Phil Dave.
Ahoy, hoy, Russ Kane.
Welcome to a bumper show on Friday. It's ridiculous. We may have to extend the show. I'm not kidding you. We may actually have to extend it. I know that's going to be difficult for Phil.
I was going to say, you might have to carry on in my absence, but I know you'll survive.
I understand because they get really annoyed in
where
Starbucks. In Starbucks where you are, and they go, "Look, mate, you've been here 4 hours. You're pretending to write a novel. You've had one coffee. Could you move?" And they go, "Well, I'm trying to do a show." Yeah, we got like crazy number of guests. Robert Van Buren from the album Live in Stockholm. He's a clockmaker, by the way. Hi, Robert. Listen. The Wind. Nice to see you, Eunice.
Quite.
Tish. Go on. Bad. You were just saying. Go on. I mean, because you're in a huge skyscraper, right?
Well, you say that. I mean, bearing in mind I'm next to Europe's tallest skyscraper. Okay.
Yeah.
Next to Europe's tallest skyscraper.
Next to.
I speak to you currently from floor 17 of the building I'm in.
Which is crazy because it only goes up to 6 floors. What the hell?
I know. It's a clever trick, honestly. Yeah, but I'm on floor 17. Now compare that to the Europe's tallest building, which has 72 floors, of course.
It does.
So it's slightly dwarfed by comparison. Can we say that anymore? It's shorter by comparison anyway.
I think the point being, the word dwarf getting slowed by
God knows. I have absolutely no idea what's okay anymore, so I thought I'd just bet it just in case. I don't want anyone to be a slight bit offended. Now, with
I don't think we have dwarves watching. They might be slightly shorter than I am, but they're not dwarves.
I don't know.
They're little people. They're little people.
Can I finish my story anyway? So
this is funny. I'm sorry.
On the 17th floor, okay?
That's a good gag.
And the building just now shook. In the strong winds, I actually felt it shaking. Now, I would have thought that I was going slightly around the twist if I'd have sort of been on my own. But actually, I was with a colleague, and he turned to me and he said, "Did you feel that just now?" So genuinely, the building shook in the wind. That's how strong it is.
That's what that woman said to Prince Andrew.
Gracious. What, did you feel that just now?
Did you feel that
just now? Too soon, anyway.
It's never too soon. It's never. Oh, dear, it's never too bloody soon, is it? What a farce! Jesus Christ! What a farce! God Almighty! What do we got here now? This is from our friend Emma Webb. Blowing a gale here in Portsmouth. My house is vibrating. Lucky girl. Core blimey. Yeah, well, Portsmouth, of course, you're right on the coast. Even I know that with my geography genius. Yeah, and I love this gag from Sen. I'm not saying it's windy, but my wheelie bin is now on a speed awareness course. That's very good. Great gag. Right, should we bring on our first guest because we're like Victoria Station today? Should we do that?
Why not, indeed?
No, I run a democracy. If you're not happy, I'm going to deviate.
I put it to the honourable gentleman that I am ecstatic. Please proceed.
Hey, by the way, can I just 1 second? You know, I only watch North American news. I never watch UK.
I'm so sorry, Paul. We tried. No, Paul, I did say I was happy to speak to you.
Paul, hang on. Have you seen what Trudeau said in Parliament? Have you watched that clip?
I have not seen.
Oh my God! Right, we'll talk about it afterwards. I couldn't believe it. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Russ. Hello,
Paul. Please tell me you're not sitting outside, mate, because you will be blown 3 miles up the high street.
So I'm sort of sitting in a conservatory, kind of bolted onto the back of my house.
Yeah. So now the first question, Paul, that we all need to know is how
as long as it's bolted. I was going to say, as long as it's bolted securely.
You're not using like blue tack, are you, or anything?
Well, we'll find out. I think is the only answer to that.
I love this. There's a certain tension to this conversation straight away because
he
could be like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, and the next thing
air of Russian roulette.
Love it. Suddenly, this is an episode of The Deer Hunter.
I've never really thought of myself as Dorothy, but
it's not the talk of the village. Now then, Paul, what's going on? Tell us why you're here.
Well, I mean, you've got. I'd say follow the white brick wall.
Yes. So I'm here because
I thought it was funny.
It's a good game.
Yeah, anyway, okay. So go for it. Sorry, you are here because
I'm here because Russ kindly invited me to talk a little bit about an issue that I've been quite concerned about over the last weeks and months around the fact that all our conversations in the media and everywhere else are around young people, and we seem to have forgotten people of a slightly older generation. And and I think it's a real shame, because the phrase that we always seem not to use is the fact that there is no substitute for experience.
Paul, can I just say, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but you say it's a shame. I think it's disgusting, personally. So please do. I'm use stronger language. You're being very polite.
This comes from my adopted son, who's only 35 years old. When I picked him up in that Romanian orphanage, I never knew he'd get to such great heights.
Are you suggesting I'm a Romanian?
Then I sold him to Linda and Ray.
And they locked him in a cupboard for 10 years.
And they locked him underneath the cupboard till they sent him to Hogwarts. And now
I was going to say, and that's where the inspiration of Harry Potter came from. Anyway, yes, so it is absolutely despicable the way that we sort of we are an ageist society, and I have a real issue with it.
So I think we're an ageist society. We're also a society that we're constantly being told that we should be labeling each other, but actually we're labeling each other more now than we ever did, because when
sick of it.
Previously, we were either male or female, old or young, slim or fat, tall or short.
Can't use the F word, Paul.
No.
Can't say the word fat, even though someone's really fat. You can't say
But luckily, the same people are too dumb to know what the word gargantuan means. So we've always got to back up.
Or salad dodger. That's what I say.
Salad dodger. There's a phrase from the past. But even I know people who describe themselves as, I'm using the F word a little bit.
You can use it. We're not the BBC.
No, he's jesting with you. You can say it.
Say what you like. That's fine.
And so it seems to me that now people are forgetting where they came from, and that the world seems to have started in 2020.
Oh, it did. Yes.
Well, some people's world.
From the god of woke. The god of woke came down and created the world.
And I think that all this talk about mental health is really interesting, but actually it only seems to apply to young people. And actually people of an older generation are suffering or finding the world a difficult place. Some parts of it totally unrecognizable. And there's no one there really that said, we recognize that you haven't grown up in the digital.
Paul, can I say that? Let me say this. Let me ask you a question. It's something that Phil and I have been discussing solidly for 2 years. And I don't often praise Phil, but I have to say that the moment the pandemic started, he was the first person I heard anywhere on the media, seriously, back in the days when we had the studio. And he said, I think the mental health fallout from this COVID-19, no one knew what the hell it was then, is going to be worse than the actual illness itself. And I think he's right. And all the experts we've had on have agreed with him. So kudos to Phil, because he was the first person to say that. And I argued with him at the time, and I was wrong and he was right. And there you go. But
that's one for the show reel. Thanks.
Yeah. And good luck with the CV, by the way. I think it's going very, very well. They can't wait to have you on Radio Jackie on the midnight shift. Now,
but the thing about,
let me ask you this. Do you think that during one of the things that seemed really, I became very aware of during the pandemic, is that older people, anybody sort of 60 plus or whatever, thrown under the bus. You're old. Let's save everybody else, sort of thing. And I thought, screw this. Who's paid all the taxes all their years?
That's not quite right.
Who's then backsides off? Come on.
No, hang on a sec. I was going to say I have to slightly disagree with that, because if you think about it, who were the first to get the jabs? Where was the worry surrounding? I know what you're saying about the care homes. Certainly, that was absolutely scandalous.
That's what I mean.
But I don't think it was a case of older people thrown under the bus. I think it was the care home situation was completely mismanaged.
Yeah,
but
totally.
When you think about when the jabs were rolled out, we were told all along it was going to be 80 plus first, then 70 plus. So actually, I do think there was an element of it. But maybe that was just to make up for it.
But guys, can I just say, I always found that a really strange strategy anyway, because all of the old people that we were there for desperately trying to get the jab to weren't the future of the country. And I always thought, actually, we should have started with the future of the country rather than those people who, in the nicest possible way, are in the waiting room.
I can't let you say that. Man, I can't let you say you can't say that. You can't just get a great big sort of yellow marker and say, right, this lot, they're in God's waiting room, so Sodom, and let's just deal with the
No, I wasn't
kids.
saying. I wasn't
No,
saying.
well, you said waiting room.
No, I was saying that all of the emphasis was on those people, and none of the emphasis on anyone else. And so I think working backwards from the eldest for the jab wasn't, in my view, the best way. I think there should have been a more equal allocation.
I think one of the thinking, look, everyone was panicking because no one knew what the hell they were doing. Quite understandably so. This was a brand new problem.
Yeah.
But so, and I'm certainly not one of those people who stands on the sideline saying, well, I'd have done, because I wouldn't have had a clue. And I made that very clear. I think everybody made it up on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But I think the view, Paul, was that the younger people somehow, because they were younger, had more physical strength and resilience, and the older people were more at risk. And I think that was probably leading their thinking with the jab. I'm thinking.
But it's whether you agree with the thinking or not. I think I've been questioning in the last few months about whether that was the right way to go. And going back to the point we started about the mental health effects of COVID, I think again for younger people they were more able to, what I think the phrase is, pivot from one thing to another. But people of an older generation who had always done things in a certain way and been very successful in that, whether that's business or personal relationships, found that they could no longer carry on doing it the way they'd always done it, maybe for 20, 30, 40 years. And they were expected to embrace this whole new world without any guidance or help, whereas everything was always focused on making sure that young people were given all the guidance and help. And I think the downside of that is we have a generation of people who are just a bit confused about where they fit in now.
When you say generation, do you mean an older generation of people who are confused, or the younger generation?
No, I think the older generation of people, maybe 55, 60 plus, who have always operated in a world. Remember, those people grew up in a non-digital world, whereas younger people now have grown up in a digital world. So effectively, right through their school age, they've understood how that digital world works.
Do you think they're happier?
No, not at all. And in fact, I know they're not, from the fact that I do with a project I do around 11 to 15-year-old young girls, where their life is so under scrutiny of everything they do, they say, they wear, they eat, they go.
They look
particularly. So no, I don't think they're any happier. But at least they understand it, and there is an element of this is how we live our lives. But for people who didn't grow up in that generation, trying to understand how you
maybe a lot of us just don't give a damn. You know, maybe a lot of us just think, this is just a load of shit. I'm not interested in your stupid views. I don't mean you, Paul. I mean, a lot of this stuff that's being peddled is garbage. Some of the people who are peddling it should be in jail. They should be in jail. There's no two ways about it.
But you can't avoid it, Russ. The problem is you can't avoid it.
You can avoid it. You can. You don't have to deep dive into it.
No, you don't have to deep dive into it. But it's very difficult, I think, to be in a current society and not be influenced or affected by the digital world. And I don't have an objection to the digital world. I have an issue with the fact that it hasn't helped people who didn't grow up in it understand how it works. And I think what's happened from there is it's robbed a lot of people of their confidence. And when you rob people of their confidence, you rob them of their self-esteem. And it becomes a self-perpetuating downward circle where people feel worthless because they don't feel they fit into the world that everyone else is fitting into. And yes, you can say, I'm not going to take any news in and I'm not going to use social media. But then you are effectively ostracized for doing so. So it isn't a free choice.
But if you can be ostracized, but if you're not on it, you won't know. So it won't matter. Do you see what I mean?
No, but hang on a second. But that's not strictly true at all. Because if there are things that sort of point one in the direction of social media, say, for example, this very program, people want to sort of watch Men's Radio. We encourage them to do it through social media. And if you're not on social media, then we can't necessarily be of service to someone. So actually, I get it. I do understand.
So if somebody says to you,
let me make it clear. I've not eschewed social media. I'm on it all the time.
Yeah.
But I have the wherewithal to know not to get dragged into an argument with a Neanderthal because there's no point, and I don't have the time. I actually have a life and things to do. I'm not interested in stupid views. You can't fix stupid. So I won't. I don't engage with that. I use it for fun. I use it to promote my books, and I use it endlessly to promote men's radio station and women's radio station. Of course I do. That's it. I control it. I don't let it control me.
But you're in the minority, I think, on that. And the other, I'll make 2 points on that. Is, when people say, "What's your Instagram?" or "What's your Twitter?" If you then say, "I'm not on Instagram or Twitter," that becomes a label, quite a quick label of you're a bit of an old fuddy-duddy because you're not in those particular communities. Now,
I wonder what circumstances are you doing that? If it was business and somebody said, "Can I have your email?" and you go, "I don't have an email," you're not going to get very far. I totally accept that. These days, it's a nonsense. All right, that's just silly. But if you're doing business, you say, "Well, I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram." Are they not using you for your abilities? If this is a work situation, if it's a friendship situation, and they can't be friends with you because you're not on Instagram, geez, you better have a review of the sort of people you want as your friends, surely.
And I agree with what you're saying, but what the point I'm making is that it doesn't feel to me for a certain type of particular certain age group that not being on Instagram is okay, or not being active on Twitter is okay. And the point that I'm trying to make, maybe not as well as I should, is that the generation that didn't grow up with Instagram or TikTok are expected to know how to use it and expected to know why to use it and that it's the way you communicate. But we didn't have that when we were younger, whereas the younger people now, that's part of their teenage development, is knowing how to use social media. So whenever you feel excluded from a group, that affects your being, your self-esteem, and your confidence. And where does that lead? And I think there is a problem in this conversation around people not feeling that they have the freedom to choose about what they use and what they don't use. That you are almost expected to be an Instagram expert or a Twitter expert.
Well, I suppose, Paul, if you think about it, it's very similar to the way that when everyone made their transition, as it were, from standard landline phone communication to mobile communication. A lot of the time you'd see programs on television, for example, that would say, "Text us." Well, to a lot of people who only had a landline, what the hell are you talking about? Text us? I don't know how to do that. What is this? So I suppose it has always happened to some degree. But
I think I just lost my garden, by the way. That
noise.
Christ. Jesus. Oh, well.
Anyway, no, I suppose it's sort of it, but that has always been the case. And even if you go back further, there are people who sort of had accounts of what life was like pre-war and then post-war and how the world was never quite the same again. And I guess that we're forever doing that with sort of generations. It's sort of very much a case of if you don't keep up, you get left behind. It's sort of as horrible, but as simple as that. And as much as I don't agree with it, I feel like it's always been that way.
If you think about it, Paul, like I think about my dad and he'd go, "The Rolling Stones, what a load of rubbish, not proper music, look at them," and all that sort of thing. It goes on. I turn around and I go, "Hip hop, what a load of crap." And, I know it's huge. I wouldn't watch the halftime show at the Super Bowl. It's of no interest to me. I don't criticize it. I'm just not interested in it. It's fine. I can avoid it rather listen to other stuff.
No, and I think the choice of what you watch, what you listen, excuse me, what you watch and what you listen is fine. For me, it's the expectation that you should is the bit that I've been concerned about. That
and I think that that's a societal attitude that has happened for a long time, because and I get that bit completely, because it's exactly the same way that, sort of politically speaking, I'm quite old-fashioned in a lot of my views. And when I hang around with my peers and start having conversations relating to anything political, they get really quite cross with me that I think differently to them.
I tell you why. It's because you keep banging on about Pitt the Younger, and it's moved on, basically.
But just on that again, there's a whole thing about the empowerment of young people around politics, and we saw that obviously in sort of 2017, 2018, 2019. That for the first time, lots of young people were getting involved in politics, and that messaging was going through the social channels, and that's where you had all this whole discussion around what's news and what's fake news. And older generations weren't in that conversation as much because they didn't take their politics in that way, because they'd always taken it in a different way, and they were expected, in my view, what I've seen around people, is they were expected to join in a conversation that they didn't really understand, or how to have that conversation.
It's much deeper than that, Paul. You've hit on a rich vein of discussion with that alone. Number one, how much of our first of all, number one, there is no news. There are no news programs anymore. There are only propaganda programs coming from the left or coming from the right. That's it. The days of switching on the 6 o'clock news and just being told the news without interpretation and getting some gobshite on a stick to come on and, because they're paid to, and give their views on it. I'm not interested in your views. Just tell me the news. I'm over 21. I'll make up my own mind. It's an endless drip feed of propaganda. That's number one. Number two, the manipulation on social media by Russia and China is huge. So you don't know what is real and what is fake. You have no idea. Number three, you mentioned TikTok. TikTok is a Chinese company. TikTok has the ability to change some of the algorithms on your phone, and you don't even know about it. And if you take it further, I was watching a fascinating discussion coming out of Texas only last night. And it was this. If you wanted to destabilize a country or destabilize the West, right, you would promote idiots. In China, the people who use TikTok are encouraged. I'm not supporting China. It's a communist state. It's really not my People's Communist Republic of China is not my cup of tea, right? Jasmine or not. But in China, the young folk are on TikTok are doing maths, are doing science, are doing engineering, are doing useful things that will build a very strong country. We've seen what's happened. They're taking over the world because they are. In the West, they promoted the notion that let's promote idiots who can do a bit of dancing, who can fall over in a prank, and make them heroes. No, they're stupid people.
And I wonder, actually, thinking about that at a deeper level, not to depress anyone further, could that be some sort of kind of digital warfare, a deliberate, slow process to actually sort of say, well, if the West are going to behave that stupidly, then that'll be the rise of the East.
Oh, absolutely, I think. And Paul, you're wrong. I really disagree with you, Paul. Facebook doesn't have the chance to change your algorithms in the way that TikTok does. I'll leave it at that. It's a complicated thing, and let's not take it away from our guest.
I would just point to that was a different Paul responding to, not me.
But, yeah.
I think a very old friend of mine once said about stupid people that they don't know they're stupid, and I think that kind of is a phrase that we should think about quite a lot. But when we say, "Oh, that's stupid," this is stupid. It's come from people who seem to have lost the power of thought. And I think, again, what we've seen from all of these networks is that people have lost or stopped thinking for themselves because they just take in what they're fed.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that is a real problem going into the future because, yes,
we have been encouraging successive generations for ages to no longer have an opinion on anything. We're telling them what their opinion should be, and if they don't have that opinion or they feel that it's not their opinion, they are just wrong, plain and simple. And there was an article I was even reading this week about how teachers now have been encouraged to drop the term Miss or Sir in the classroom because they want it to be gender neutral. And what happens off the back of that is, because that's just further evidence that this woke agenda is penetrating the curriculum. Sadly, in turn, it's going to bring up another generation to not even realize that there is such a thing as respect for elders, and that you can refer to someone as male or female, and that by and large people are either male or female. Yes, of course, there is a minority of people who do go through the most torrid time deciding, sexuality wise and gender wise, what they are and who they are. I get that, but it's not everybody, and you don't have to encourage everyone to be the same. But what we're seeing now is, as a result of that kind of behavior, an increase more than ever of gender confusion in young people as they grapple with what is actually just simple biology.
And when I said that certain people should be in jail, those putting little children, I'm talking about ages 4, ages 5 on beta blockers, they should be in jail. Those people,
but
they're criminals.
But when you talk about the whole gender discussion, biologically you are either male or female. How you want to identify?
Well, you're not allowed to say that anymore, which just shows how far the madness has spread, doesn't it?
But I am saying it because biologically you are male or female. How you want to so-called identify seems to be the latest sort of trend. Now, if you then layer onto that what I've been talking about, the influences of people not thinking for themselves, is probably a lot of people who are seeing role models or seeing people who say I'm not actually a label, but actually we've got more labels now than we've ever had with binary, neutral, whatever all these different phrases are.
What the hell it means.
A lot of these kids, what worries me is they will go in a direction because they've either seen it, heard it, or other people around them are doing it. And that goes back to the whole thing about how do we get people to think for themselves?
Well, there's
and the
three
older
things.
generation,
Sorry.
if I might,
Of course,
we were always encouraged as a generation to be free to think for ourselves, and so we have a real polarization of people by effectively their age, of who still like to think of themselves. The 3 people on this call, and I'm sure lots of your viewers and listeners, and a generation of people who just have never even been told that they're allowed to think for themselves because they have to be a certain something to fit into a certain society that the older people don't recognize. And so the line is the gap's getting wider and wider. So how I relate to
anybody who Paul, anyone who doesn't think there is an agenda here has got their head in the sands. If you take somebody like Joe Rogan, whether you like Joe Rogan or whether you don't like him, that's not the question. The biggest podcaster in the world, the biggest audience in the world, killing any of the major networks, killing. And the moment they didn't like his free speech, they tried to deplatform him, bringing up stuff from the past that was taken out of context in many cases. Now, I'm not here to support Joe Rogan. He hardly needs my support with a $100 million deal plus. But you can see how the major companies can deplatform people at the drop of a hat if they don't like their agenda, if it doesn't fit in with whatever they are trying to push. And that is incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. Because it's what the Nazis did. Sorry, it's what they did.
But what it means is the control of all of that is actually in very few people's hands.
Very few. That's correct. Very few.
And those people, those very few people, are actually, in a way, the most powerful people in the world. They're making
in a way, they are, Paul. They are the most powerful people.
Well, they are amongst the people who listen to that podcast, or they are amongst the people who follow that particular person.
But we should be allowed to say. We should be allowed. I'm sorry. I'm going to get away from the Joe Rogan thing in a second. But what I'm saying is, we should be adult enough, or have enough brains to say, I agree with that bit that he's saying, and I don't agree with that. That's absolutely fine. There's people who watch the show and sometimes get very irate with me or irate with Phil. Mostly with Phil, to be perfectly honest.
I was going to say, I think the latter happens slightly more frequently.
Mostly with Phil. But that's absolutely fine. It's called a conversation. And when the problem is why there will be probably a second civil war, you can see what's happening in Canada. Jesus Christ. Why there will probably be
Canada of all places having a civil war.
Canada, the most polite, but this is what happens when you bring in fascism under the guise of liberalism. It's the whole thing, right? But what I'm saying is, when you have no middle ground, and this is the bit that really scares me. Every other situation in life, there is something you can agree on, but this constant drip feed, everything that you've said so far in our conversation. This constant way of you're having to take a side, and those sides are getting more polarized, and more extreme, And there is no middle ground. And when there's no middle ground, that leads to a very, very difficult situation.
But going back to where we started a little bit on this, is that we want to have conversations, but people are quite fearful about entering the conversation. Whereas before, that conversation would be a small group, it might be a small debate. Now it's a worldwide conversation where your view can actually not just be criticized, but you can be vilified, you can be harassed. I think the word is trolled.
Well, you get
People-
piled. It's called getting piled on. You get piled on, and it's horrendous.
So that means that more and more people will stop expressing their view for that fear, and therefore those with the loudest voice, or the most objectionable voice, or the most aggressive voice will be most heard, and those people listening will then just become disciples of that particular view, because the people who don't agree are going, actually, I can't get involved in this because it's too ugly, or
there's no point.
Well,
I mean,
I think we could carry on having this conversation, frankly, for the rest of this afternoon. But I'm
we're
terribly
like
sorry.
Heathrow Airport. They're all stacking up. Our lovely guests.
Well, arguably, we're a bit busier. We're arguably a bit busier than Heathrow Airport because most of the planes are grounded at the moment.
Oh, are they?
So.
Okay. Last, there goes my trip to California this afternoon.
It's a much nicer experience than being at Heathrow Airport. Well, it is for me. Anyway.
Bless you, Paul. Come back and talk to us. We're not. The stuff that you've started to discuss. There's so many avenues of conversation there that are so important, and really, all of it comes down, all of it, to our mental health.
Correct.
How everything that you've discussed, everything affects
an effect
us
on
and
us.
has a serious effect on our mental health. Thank you so much. Really,
Thank you, Paul.
I'm glad we could arrange this. I'm glad we could.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Likewise.
Okay. Bye, Paul. What a lovely chap. Shall we crack straight on?
Absolutely. Next.
Shanters, go and make a cup of tea, darling. Go and make a cup of tea. Go and go with your lovely mugs.
No, she's not there today. She's home. She's home again.
No, but she's probably got her lovely mug. I bet her brother gives it, or maybe he sells her some mugs.
Oh yeah, there
they are. Look,
hang
on, don't go away. There it is.
There we go.
There we are. Now are the orders pouring in from all the cast of the Bay? They're pouring in, I hope. Right. We'll see you in a bit. Now, Sarah Furness, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
We're great.
Now, Sarah, you are the founder and the CEO of Well Be It. First and foremost, to anyone who hasn't heard of Well Be It, shame on them. What is it?
Okay, so thank you for inviting me along today.
No need to thank you. You're saying that now. You're saying that now, Sarah. You don't know.
We'll change that. Don't worry.
We can change that in 10 minutes.
I can say it candidly now, can't I? Whereas maybe
you can,
I won't
and then you can say,
know.
Jesus, why did
Let's see
I
how it
do
goes.
that?
So I spent 20 years in the military as a helicopter pilot, and during that time,
I'm sorry. Whoa! You just said that so matter of fact. Say again. You for how many years you were a helicopter pilot?
Yes, 20 years in the RAF.
Oh
I
my
am
God!
Worthy. Thank you.
That. What helicopters? Which ones were you flying?
The one that no one's ever heard of, the Puma. So
I've heard of the Puma. I'm not helicopter nuts. I watch all those channels. Are you kidding? Of course I heard of the Puma. That is, Phil, it's a big deal. Trust me. It's a big deal.
It's a big cat.
Wow. Well, that's a big cat.
It is. Yes, it is. Yeah. And of course, I'm sure you know, anyone who's flown helicopters, the whole rule of being a pilot is you have to tell everyone that you're a pilot. So I've got that out of the way. But it was the reason that I founded Well Be It was because I realized that life is tough, not just because being in the military, but that's my experience was being in the military. And, there are times when we have to process some things that are quite tricky, but we don't necessarily want therapy. We don't necessarily want to go and lie on a chaise longue and drag up our childhood and kind of re-traumatize ourselves. And also pilots are vehemently opposed to going to a doctor anyway, because they have the power to ground us. And I realized that actually most of us probably don't need that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a well-being specialist, if you like. And there are lots of ways that we can proactively train our minds to be more resilient. And I also realized that lots of other people were going through a similar thing. And I thought, well, if this approach works for me, then it might work for other people. And of course, I've been surrounded by mostly blokes in my career. So they were my target audience, I suppose, to start with. And I just thought, no, do you know what? This actually can really help people. So that's why I started Wellbeat, because I wanted to be able to provide that kind of proactive resilience skills and tools and education.
So where's the starting point? If let's just say hypothetically that you've got someone, it is for military personnel, is it, or is it for anyone?
No, it's not. I do sometimes work with ex-military. So I do coaching packages, one-to-one coaching packages, and I'll normally sit down and have a chat with them and then work out a 6-session package that I would do. Or I do workshops, and that's what I really like doing, is going into the small to medium businesses and training the leaders, but also the staff in some kind of, I call it military grade mindfulness. So it's all of my military training with some mindfulness thrown in. So it's kind of mindfulness with an edge, I suppose. It's not the sitting in a field of daisies wearing hemp. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's more about active mindfulness.
I mean,
and how
you
to
say
train your
that.
brain.
I'm not convinced.
We leave
but if
that
you
to
say
Ollie
so.
Mammon. We leave that to Ollie Mammon on the ABC of CBD on men's radio station, 6 o'clock every Thursday evening.
But Sarah, it's curious though. You say that towards the start of this conversation, you're no psychologist, and yet you're now sort of saying that you can help people sort of almost like help cope, given mechanisms to cope with potential mental struggles. Does that ever come across as like a barrier between you and potential clients? Because obviously, I mean, you clearly know what you're talking about. It's perfectly obvious you're a very sound and strong mind, and I just wonder whether or not sort of just the not being in that field of psychology ever sort of comes across as a bit of a barrier between you and someone you're trying to help.
Only if I was trying to help someone I wasn't qualified to help, which I wouldn't do. I don't deal with people who have diagnosed mental health conditions. That's not my area of expertise. I deal with the 90%, and I've picked that figure out of the air, but the 90% of people that don't have diagnosed conditions, but are just kind of rubbing along and doing all right, but they could be doing better. And those are my clients. So as long as
Thank you. I hope you don't mind asking us to basically clarify that, because there'd just be some people who maybe was torn between what you said. But no, that's. But what would happen if someone actually was to come to you? So you say you have a chat with them. What are you looking for when you speak to someone? What are you actually looking for in a person to know how to help them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We normally just have we normally have quite an open conversation. I think the thing is that I kind of put myself out there mostly on LinkedIn and talk about what I think are the tools that helped me and what I think are the tools that we need as leaders. And if it resonates, they'll come to me and they already have an idea of what they want to get out of it. And that's the ideal scenario, because even though it's coaching and it's not therapy and it's not counseling, people still might shy away from this. Well, I'm not broken, so why would I come to you? And I don't think the large majority of us are. I think there's this tremendous kind of narrative at the moment, and I know it's well-meaning, but there's this kind of narrative around where we're fragile and we're broken and we need to fix ourselves. And I actually don't think that's true. I think we're actually very tough and resilient, and I think we can work with our strengths.
Bravo.
So
I have thought that for ages. I am so pleased. I was genuinely beginning to think I'm one of the only ones who thinks like that anymore. Thank goodness for you.
Yeah. Listen, can I ask you a question? I'm going to sort of just march into the minefield, as I always do. In the military,
you can't say that.
I used it deliberately. Right, Sarah, here's the thing. In the military, you can't muck around. You have a very specific job, very specific tasks. You can't say, you know what, today I'm feeling a little. You're flying a freaking helicopter, for God's sake, or you're driving a tank, or you're in charge of a whole group of people's lives. There is no time for that. I'm not saying you don't have tremendous stress, and the aftermath of it can be horrendous, but at the time you have to do that job. And it's very interesting how that sits with the whole area of mental health. I'm not talking about if you see your best friend blown to smithereens. That's going to have a horrendous effect on anybody. As I said in another show, I get a paper cut opening an envelope, it's the end of the world. So I don't know how you guys deal with this. I don't. I'd be in kit form, I'd be in absolute kit form. But do you think we've gone, and I'm being very careful, too far? Because some people, say, why do you do this radio station? Why did you bother to start it with Howard? Aren't you just comforting people who already, they should be a little bit tougher? How does that marry up with your military background?
So again, I mean, great question. There's lots in there, isn't there? There's kind of two things. One's the military background and one's the have we gone too far? That's what I'm picking up on. So I suppose the first thing I would say is, me personally, but I think this is true for a lot of other people, it's not the bombs and bullets that affect resilience. It's the being separated from family. It's the not knowing where your next posting is coming from. It's being afraid that you won't get invited to the Christmas party. I think we're all human at the end of the day.
Never heard that explained before. Never. Wow.
So I actually think we're a lot more similar than people think. I mean, obviously, we like to parade around as superheroes, and I'm sure there are no pilots out there that are thanking me for saying we're just like you, but I think we are. So it's.
I don't. I really, really don't think.
I don't. I'm sorry. I was going to say I have to beg to differ because I don't think I'd have the backbone, if I'm honest with you.
Can I tell you why I don't think we? Sarah, can I jump in? I'm so sorry. Can I tell you why I don't agree with you? And I think you're very different and kind of a bit superhuman. Without going into details, I sat in a light aircraft every day for 20 years, 5 days a week, doing a show.
Did you?
Yeah, I never mentioned it before. Shut the face. Shut up. Now, everybody said to me, "Oh, look, you must know how to fly. Don't you want to learn to fly?" And I said, "Absolutely not. It would the thought of being on my own in an aircraft at the controls and something going wrong, the mere thought of it terrified me." And I was there I flew 1.5 million miles. And I never bothered to learn to fly. I learned how to land the plane because if my pilot had a heart attack or a stroke, I wanted to survive. But I had no interest in doing that. I couldn't do what you do. Couldn't do it. I do think you're different. I think you're a different breed. You're wired differently. You're much braver.
You said an important word there. You said couldn't. And in the Air Force, we're renowned for having a can-do attitude. So again, I mean, I obviously want people to think I'm a superhero because I want them to think I've got something they don't. But the reality is that I've been surrounded in an environment where I think the military did have high expectations of us, and therefore we did. We were expected to be tough, so we were. And I think the narrative right now is actually telling people that we're not, and saying we can't.
Exactly. So do you know what I think it is, Sarah? I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, because for me, I believe that everyone has the ability to do within reason whatever they want. Okay. They might not be able to change their thought process to allow for them to do that. So let's take the military, for example. I don't feel that I would be courageous enough to enter the military, even though I'm perfectly aware if I was told my life depended on it, I'd blooming well go into the military. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? So I know that everyone has got the ability to do something as long as it's a case of mind over matter. But it's really, really interesting because that is exactly the world we live in now, where everyone is being told, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't. And it's every opportunity is put down, push back into your box, back where you belong, think this way or else. And it actually follows on very nicely from what we were talking about with our last guest, Paul, because he was saying now that he feels that society's almost got no place for him just because he was brought up in such a different era. And that's what terrifies me, is that actually en masse, we're saying we're in some sort of mental health crisis in this country. But I believe, no proof of this, no expertise to say it otherwise, merely an observation, it's actually self-inflicted.
I agree. Self-inflicted, yes. To a certain extent, I think the conditions make a big difference. Particularly COVID hasn't helped because there's been lots of rules. Everyone's followed the rules by and large. And I think, and I've been in a big organization where we had rules for very good reasons. But ultimately, wherever you have a rule, it makes it easy for people to not really think for themselves. And then they quickly start to lose confidence in their own judgment, and they suddenly think that they're looking to someone else. And I think the values of today are, I have a right to have happiness and well-being. And I think that's fantastic.
100%.
But what we But what I think we've got slightly wrong is, but someone else can give that to me. And happiness is a choice, as an individual choice that we have to make for ourselves. And unfortunately, I think that's got somehow lost. So we're empowering people to want more, but we're not telling them that they can get it for themselves and that they're so unbelievably capable of doing it themselves.
I don't think
the
we
only
have.
ones that can do it.
One of the great myths is that we have a right to be happy. We don't have a right to anything, really, apart from not to be shot in the street, etc. Taking it to ad absurdum, as we would say in the law. But we don't have a right. If you want to be happy, it comes from within, and you don't need other people's permission to be happy. And the great myth is that things, stuff, will make you happy. They don't. Happiness comes from within, but you can't march around, as seems to be the thing. You have a right. I have a right to be happy. No, you don't, actually. You were born, and the rest of it, sorry to say, it's up to you. It's up to you. You want to be happy, you can be happy, even in terrible circumstances or great circumstances. But it's your decision. It doesn't come from outside, and you don't have an automatic right to it. That's what I believe. Always have done, because I think it gives a false expectation, and that gap, the expectation gap, is where the problems arise. I have to say, Sarah, I would much rather, in all seriousness, be coached by someone like you than someone who's read a few books, bought them off Amazon, and set themselves up as some sort of lifestyle coach bullshit, because it's all it's nonsense. It's crap. And we've had guests, Phil and I have had guests, and then afterwards I go, what the hell was that? Jesus.
Seriously, I mean, some of the things that we've heard that they've suggested that we do for a happier life, it's just bunkum. It's absolute bunkum.
It is bunkum. We're polite, but they don't get
inside we're laughing.
But yourself, I'd much rather someone who has got discipline, has clearly got skills, who is accomplished. I'm always going to listen to somebody like that, because there's going to be things to learn, things to garner. Someone sitting in the field smelling the flowers, I've got other things to do, thanks. It's not for me. So I get where you're coming from. That's the point.
Yeah, but Sarah, you must have immeasurable, because this is certainly sort of what I think, because I'm sensing that we're all on a very similar page here. And from my perspective, I get so immeasurably frustrated when I see other people around me who they let the world around them get the better of them, rather than actually trying to put mind over matter. I've said for as long as I can remember, a positive mental attitude goes such a long way for so much in this world. And I understand why people have negative thoughts, because we're constantly drip-fed negative thoughts. You only have to look at everything that's gone on through COVID to know that. Every single day, we're told the number of people who have died from COVID. Never do they mention the number of people who recover from the COVID, who survive COVID. Every day, it's just the negative.
Well, a nervous society is a much more malleable society.
There may be another variant that's more serious than the one we've got before. The vaccinations might not work against it. Everything's negative perspective all the blooming time, just drummed into us. I understand why people think negatively, but it's still very frustrating when you know the alternative could be so much better.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I have my, I make judgments, and people that say, well, I can't do that or I can't do this, I think, well, I don't agree with you. And I think maybe a few years ago, I would have written them off. But what I'm trying to do now is understand how they got to that place. And it's almost a bit like a campaign of influence, the good old fashioned military kind of start with an understand phase to understand why they are telling themselves these lies. And I think it comes down to choice. I think we have been sold, unwittingly perhaps, this idea that we don't have a choice over how we feel, over how we think, over how we respond. It's even in the words we use. We say something like, well, he makes me angry. No one makes you feel anything that you don't choose to feel. But it's the words we use all the time. We're telling ourselves we don't have any choices.
So true.
I want to understand.
So true.
And I think it's important that people understand that actually no one would actually be miserable if they knew they had a choice not to be. So I think a lot of it is because people don't realize they have a choice.
Do you know
Understanding
what?
how they got there and then helping them get out of it.
Sarah, when you're driving along and someone gives you the finger and flips you the bird, somebody said, "Oh, you're not angry. You're not reacting." And I'm going, "Well, they're never going to see me again. I don't know who the hell they are. I'm never going to see them again." Now, my choice is I can get pissed off and angry, or I can forget it. It's irrelevant. I don't care about them. They don't care about me. It's not going to affect. It's not going to affect my day.
This plays in brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this plays in brilliantly to a point that Asa has just made. Sorry, Sarah, I'll put this on screen. You might disappear. Forgive me. Right. Asa says, authentic happiness is neither a physical expression nor a symptom of what others do for you. Rather, it is the acceptance that no matter what, I will be at peace with whatever is going on in my life. I've never heard it more succinctly and brilliantly put.
Asa is watching and listening from New York State. We have a lot of people all over the world watching this. Oh, yeah. And here we are. And this is another person in the therapeutic community, Glassy Amanda. Hi, Amanda. Very true. I always say that to my clients. It's nobody else's fault. If you feel angry, you allow that emotion to affect you.
And can I also say, Glassy does say earlier on as well, that let's remind ourselves that it is okay to feel sad and not feel positive all the time. Absolutely not saying that. And I'm very, very sorry if that's the impression that at any stage we've given through this.
That's a really key point, though. And I think that's why we need to understand why people believe they have no choices, because it's not because they're weak or lazy. And I think a lot of the thing that I do is I give people permission to acknowledge that they've given their choices away. And they're not going to do that if they feel stupid or judged. So I'm saying, actually, it's not really your fault. The environment's caused it. Actually, the way our brains are wired, our brains are quite lazy. So we'll naturally avoid making choices if we can. So I think it's important people understand that it's not a failure in them. However, once you know that, you can start to make some changes in your life.
This word failure,
you need to be leading the country, Sarah. Seriously.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Honestly, I don't know how, but please, you need to do something in leadership. This is honestly one of the most inspirational conversations we've had in a very, very long time on this show. And I really mean that. I promise you. Russ gives the flannel. I say it how it is.
I'm not
just saying.
To you, Phil. I'm not speaking to you, Phil. I got a good therapist for you. Her name's Sarah Finesse. Yes, Sarah. I have a friend. I have a friend called Phil Dave. Please,
not a therapist.
Lead him towards the path not to be an arse. Thank you. That's what we need.
Sarah, will you please come back and chat more with us? Honestly,
because
it's been really, really, really interesting. Because I think what you've done is taken away a lot of the cotton wool and the fancy schmancy sparkles and just said, look, these are the facts. These are actual facts. This is a proper way forward. There we are. Sarah, thank you so much. I'm glad we could put this together finally. Okay.
Likewise. Thank you so much for coming. It's great.
Absolutely. Our next guest is going to be very jealous because you've grown your fringe out. And this has been going on for some months. I'm just going to show you. You see, now, Chantal, this is what happens. Chantal, this is what happens when you grow your fringe properly. Look at
Chantal,
this.
For what it's worth, your fringe is better than mine, so don't worry about it. It's all good.
No, you aren't. You're such a wag, Russ Kane.
I'm terrible. Sarah, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Keep well.
See, I couldn't resist.
Gracious me.
I couldn't resist.
Yeah, we noticed.
Oh, stop it. Now, you like it that way. Okay, looks like the opening credits of Dallas now.
Well, it's better than looking like the Brady Bunch. Anyway.
Expecting Charlene Tilton to rock up any minute. Thank you for sitting there so patiently.
Not at all.
Now, you've had some of the length, haven't you? You've had some of the length taken off.
No, we are not having a conversation about my
because it looks fabulous. Everybody, you don't see all the messages going,
who are listening on their radio.
Oh, she looks all marvellous. And you don't see all that stuff. It's just it looks great. That's all I'm saying.
Russell,
I'm not allowed to say this.
Right, anyway. Right.
Oh,
I don't think it's so much you're not allowed to say it. It's just what on earth you're saying it on radio for. But anyway.
Because I don't care. Because now then, a rose between two thorns. You're right.
Too right.
Now, can I start off with something a little bit more serious? And it's a question for you.
Can I just say, Sue, you're absolutely right.
Get the hell out. Sorry, just leave. Now, Shantas, Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I saw some. We had last week Daniel Ryan and Andrew
Yes.
Dalbiggin from the series The Bay that was
Yeah.
on. Okay. And I chit chat with Dan Ryan quite a bit on Twitter, this, that, and the other. And today he posted something that really shook me up. Really shook me up. That was no, not Elvis. Shook up, you idiot.
Oh,
And
sorry.
he said, "Why do people have to be so rude? Do you not understand? We are human beings." In other words, people had been absolutely trolling him that they didn't like this series of The Bay. This is series number 3.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And you could see the comments. He didn't show the comments, and I didn't want to read them because they're from idiots. And I wrote back to Dan. I mean, we're not personal friends, but we have a kind of warmth. And I said, it's just awful. I said, number one, they wouldn't say anything. If they met you personally, they'd say nothing.
Well, they'd be thrilled and they'd ask for a selfie.
Oh, cool. They're keyboard cowards, as I call them.
Yeah.
And the other thing, and this is my question to you, why do people feel, that was Rupert just falling over, why do people feel that they have the right to be so rude? They're not writers, they're not actors, they're not directors, they're not editors.
No, but they are experts.
But my point is this, Chantal. In the old days, you had 2 channels when I grew up, and then 3 channels, then 4. We've got, what do you got, 500 plus? 500 plus. If you don't like watching The Bay,
turn over.
But what is it with people? This is to do with mental health and television. That's why I'm shoehorning it together.
No, you're absolutely right. And there are people out there who, want to vent their spleen. I can remember the very first television program I produced where we got hate mail for one of the presenters. I won't say what the mail was about and which presenter it was because it wouldn't be fair, and it's going into a whole other area that we would discuss at another time. But it was racist. It clearly was racist.
Wow.
And I'd never seen a letter like it. It was really extraordinary for me to suddenly go, who are these people? And somebody said to me, well, the Green Ink Brigade. And I said, what's the Green Ink Brigade?
Yeah.
I just didn't have an understanding that one could even write a letter to a television station and just be utterly foul.
Yeah.
It completely mystified me.
Yep.
So, of course, that has got worse because everybody's now got a foghorn.
Yeah.
Everybody's at liberty to say what they want and they think they're allowed to do so. And common civility has gone out of the window.
Oh, it's
But
worse, though. It's worse. It's the people now think their opinion matters. And that's what really bothers me. I'd say everyone's got a right to an opinion. It doesn't mean that matter matters to others. It may matter to you,
but you could see that
to others.
You could see that Daniel Ryan, who's a jolly good actor and very varied and versatile.
Yeah.
Okay, he does great comedy, he does great tragedy. You could see he was seriously upset. It had obviously got to him. And I thought I must discuss it with you. I only saw it first thing this morning. I thought I must discuss it with Chantal. Nick Battle, I know you're there, Nick. We will bring you on, but just hold tight, have a cup of coffee or something.
Can I just say, I'm about to disappear off in 2 minutes because I will finish at 1. I'm very sorry. I know this program's going to go on to about 1:30, but I do have to disappear off at 1. But just before we go, can I just say that I did watch this week, or I started watching this week, This Is Gonna Hurt.
Yes, and
on BBC. And I'm absolutely acutely embarrassed because it actually made me laugh out loud on a couple of occasions on the train when I was watching it. So I got some very strange looks from passengers who were quite concerned that this strange little creature in a fedora was just laughing his head off at some stage. So very, very funny. The only criticism I'd say, swearing not necessary. They didn't need to have foul language in it. It would have been just as funny. But anyway.
Phil, do you have to get out of your table at Starbucks because the staff are getting annoyed with you now?
They've stuck a little reserve sign next to me that it just says reserved for at 1 o'clock. So
1 o'clock, bless him.
Off you go.
Well,
but I shall trot off. It's a pleasure as ever. Chantal, I'll see you next week. Russ, see you on Monday.
And
thank you very much indeed. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, Phil. There he is. I never liked him. Now, we
Sod off.
I love Phil. Phil's just the greatest.
Dear.
Phil's fantastic, but he's still there. You see, you can't. He's like the Ken Dodd of radio. This show would go on until 7 o'clock tonight.
I know, but you've got to be careful. He could just pull the plug on you.
No, we can't. Hate you. You see, he can't resist. He can't resist. This is the.
I really am going now. Bye.
Oh, God. No, he has gone now. Now, here's the thing. Now, but it isn't extraordinary. This green ink. We used to get those letters at Capital Radio. And the advantage you had was that the envelope would come in green ink, the letter would be green ink, and you think, okay, you're mad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to use unpolitically incorrect. I said, you're a lunatic.
Yeah.
Fine, but at least it was on green ink, so you knew. The fact that it turns up in Helvetica 12 point on Twitter or something, you think, that must be very serious. They're equally mad.
Yeah.
There you are. Right. I owe you an apology.
Not at all.
I know I owe you an apology. Trigger point. Utter nonsense. You were right. Wrong. You were right. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I wrote my little sort of piece, which I did say, and I didn't know if you saw it on Facebook. Just like the logic. I'm sorry. I thought it was going to be great. I've got to watch it now. Because I'm committed. But see, this is it. I'm committed. I've got to watch it. But you were absolutely right. You said it was pants. I'm going, oh, no, it's terrific drama. No, it isn't. Absolute hokum.
Well, it just doesn't have a story. I mean, but, that's I think everything else sort of works. Nice cast, nice people.
Oh, the cast is great.
They all turned up on time and they wore the right clothes. But the one thing that was lacking was a story.
Was the plot, yes. And this talk about green ink. You're absolutely right. Kimmy says David once had a complaint. We got this. So you won't believe what we used to get. Had a complaint written in green ink on the cardboard inside of a Persil packet. That's that Giles Brandreth again. There it is. That's Lloyd Grossman for you. It's unbelievable.
That is wonderful.
What have you been, Nick? I promise we will come to you. Please, let's have another cup of tea. Nick, we're actually extending the show for you. I'm extending
I'll
the
be
show
very
for him.
quick, Nick.
No, I don't. No. Nick's fine. We're extending. Don't rush. No, I'm not giving you the bum's rush. I won't do that because we value your contribution always. What have you seen that's good?
Well, I have to say, I've seen some cracking good telly this week. I've also been massively busy, so I'm having to do my viewing late into the evening, but there's been so much good stuff to watch. The first thing I watched last weekend was a 3-part drama on BBC 4. BBC 4 is known for its international dramas. Channel 4 does the same thing under the guise of something called Walter Presents, and they have lovely and happy for a long time. And those are their international dramas.
So making notes.
Yeah. But BBC 4 has also become the place where they buy international dramas and they play them out on BBC 4. And nearly everything that they buy for BBC 4 is really good. The latest is something called Dark Woods. In fact, there are 2 series, one of which I'll mention in a second. Dark Woods, 3-parter, 3 long 2-hour films.
Blimey.
It's from a true story. It starts with 2 dead couples in Germany. And it starts in 1989, and it's a true story that spans decades. Okay. Basically, 2 couples are murdered. A woman goes missing, and it turns out that her husband is the chief of police in a different part of Germany. Then there is a terrible investigation, which goes absolutely nowhere. And everybody, most particularly the family, incredibly frustrated by not being able to find out who has perpetrated these terrible murders. And it literally goes on for 2 decades, I think. But it's very well done, extremely well acted. It's rather low key. It's not in your face. It's not aggressive drama. It's very thoughtful in how it's put together. And I really liked it. So it's 3 2-hours. It's on BBC 4 and it's called Dark Woods.
It's kind of clever, isn't it? When you think about some of these things, they'd say, hey, I've just made a film. It's 6 hours long. And you go, jog on. I don't think so. Hey, I've divided it up into 2 hours. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. And then you still binge watch. I'm the worst for that. With The Bay, I sat there like an idiot. I watched 6 hours back to back, right into the night.
No.
You
Well,
know,
I've got a nice easy one for you, which is
Okay.
a 90-minute documentary,
Oh, good.
which is on Netflix. So it'll be for everybody all over the world listening to the show.
Yep.
Everybody will be able to find it. It was actually an American documentary that was made over a year ago, and it's about a place called The Villages. And I had never really heard of The Villages until about well, it was when I was living in America, and you suddenly realize that the American right-wing politicians were always visiting what I thought were actual villages in Florida where elderly people lived, rather like the Golden Girls gang.
Yes.
Well, The Villages is one community of 130,000 elders, as they're described in America. 130,000 people living in one community, stretched out over 35 square miles in central Florida. And this is a 90-minute documentary that's very playful, follows several of the people who live there, the good and the bad. This place has 50 golf courses. They have discos every night. They do hoedowns. I mean, it's an absolutely extraordinary community in that everybody is allowed to feel as though they're going back to their happiest years.
Oh, God, it's Cocoon.
It's just extraordinary. But they've been very careful about how they have chosen the people that they're going to follow. Clearly, they've picked a recent widow who's utterly miserable. Yeah. They've picked a guy who's actually a bit of a charlatan, who's parked up in the Villages and who is looking for an elderly chick because he's run out of money and he's living in his van.
No.
He's a terrific character, great Lothario. It's very well put together. It's 90 minutes. It's called The Villages. It's on Netflix. Don't miss it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a fantastic idea, though. You know, I guess there's two schools of thought. One is, oh my God, you're just going there. It's God's waiting room with 130,000 people. Or why not just have a damn good time? And the hell with what everybody else thinks. How fantastic.
It's what they're doing. It is why, you know, they're all having a very nice time. They've all got a few quid left. Yeah. They're a pretty right-wing bunch, it has to be said, which is why the Republican Party always send their representatives down there.
They love them down there, yeah.
To garner the votes. I think they voted 70% for Trump last time round. But anyway, it's still fascinating. It's really interesting.
How fantastic is that?
Yeah.
What else?
Well, then I was going to say for the blokes, but actually I watched this and I really enjoyed it. And I can't stand football and I'm not really into sport, but it's the documentary everybody's talking about this week, which is called Rooney.
Who might that be about, Chantel?
Yeah, well, it's not about Rooney Mara. It's about Wayne Rooney, the footballer.
Oh, God, really?
And it's an authorized biography, which means that you're getting what the Rooney family want you to see. There's good and bad in that, but it does mean that lots of great contributors have agreed to be in it. Thierry Henry, Sven-Göran Eriksson, David Beckham. And actually, it's very interesting because it takes you really from when he was a child all the way through to where he is now. He's no longer a player. Apparently, he's the manager of Derby County, none of which I really.
No idea.
I know, this all trips off my tongue these days.
It's unbelievable. You're like the Kenneth Wostenholme of glamour.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
But he did have a really interesting career. His wife is in the press a lot at the moment.
Just a bit.
Because there's a bit of a sort of wagathon.
She's won the first round. Did you see that?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right. In the Wagatha Christie, one of the greatest media names ever given to a thing, Wagatha Christie. I think
it's very clever.
Anyway,
so it's worth watching. It's only 90 minutes, and even if you're not a football fan, and I'm not, it's a really interesting biography of somebody who is a really, really seminal sportsman in this country, who was the best footballer that we had.
He was very good. Back in the day, he was. Back in the day when I actually had a life, I went to some gala dinner or luncheon or something, and Colleen Rooney was one of the speakers. Oh God, this is going to be dire. She was great. I sat there and I thought, Russell, you're an idiot. Shut up and listen. And she was charming, delightful, and I never met her, but her speech was lovely. And I came away with a very different sort of view, because your view is always prismed through the media, and she's just seen as this sort of vacuous idiot. And she was anything but when she spoke. Good luck to her. Why not?
I think they both came from really solid families, which says a lot for the family, really. And they are family people. They've got 4 kids of their own. They're great access to the kids as well, and they come across as really, caring, loving parents. It's it's worth watching. I enjoyed it.
Interesting, because you have as much interest in football as I do. Which, if you use the James Webb telescope in outer space, you still couldn't spot it at all. Right. A quick little roundup.
One quick one. I will give you Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux is back on BBC Two. Louis Theroux brought us lots of lunatics, is all that can be said, over many, many years. And there is a bit of an argument about whether we should give voice to these people that he has given voice to. Some of them are clearly racist. Some of them are bigots. It's very interesting.
Do you remember the one with that awful Nazi in South Africa on the white horse?
Yes,
I can't
Terre
remember his name.
Blanche. Eugene
That was
Terre.
it.
Oh
my. Yeah, that was terrifying.
That wasn't Louis Theroux. That was the documentary Nick.
It was Nick Broomfield. You're absolutely right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
it was Nick Broomfield.
I've
never forgotten that. The guy turns up 2 hours late on a white horse, dressed like Goebbels or something.
I think that was Nick Broomfield.
He was Nick Broomfield, and he has a go at Nick Broomfield.
Yeah,
and Nick says, "Oh, well, very politely," and he, oh God, he was so scary. He's dead now. Good, that's what I say.
So he's gone. It's a 3-parter. There's only 1 episode out. He's gone back to the white supremacists in the US, which is difficult, and it's horrible to listen to the stuff that they're saying. And it's all there. I was going to say in black and white. Clearly, it's not. It's in color, but it's really horrible listening to that.
It is. I remember the last one he did, Shantas, and these people are terrifying.
Yeah.
He goes to their camp. I won't even say, even on our radio station, which is uncensored and everybody knows I got a bit of a potty mouth, I won't even read out the signs as you approach the camp. And when you're within the camp, they were beyond repulsive.
Beyond.
And he was, I think, I'm not a massive Louis Theroux fan, but he was very brave. He was very brave in those things, because those guys would kill you in a heartbeat, and they really would. It wasn't all talk. They were armed to the teeth. They were absolute raving Nazis, and if they hated you, they would kill you. I thought he was very brave.
I mean, he used to sort of half pretend he was friends with them in the old days, and he slightly moved that stance.
Yes.
Because I think the way that he did it in the past was quite clever for then, but it's not sophisticated enough for now. Because we all know what he was up to, and he wasn't really their friend. He was just making them look like twits. But actually now he's more of an independent journalist and gives them a bit more of a hard time, which is why they push back even further. But some people would say that we should never hear this stuff. When he did he featured something called the Westboro Baptist Church at one stage, which was very, very homophobic. Well, people, having seen that on his program, joined the church. And you go, well, actually, if they'd never known about the church, they wouldn't have joined it. So is this a good thing to be voicing or not? I leave that with you.
You see, but just in a minute, because it's a huge, we could do an entire hour on that. But you're a television producer of great note. You've won awards and everything else. I've never been in that position. Do we hide it from the world, or do we say to the world, look at these lunatics? You make up your own mind.
No, well, for me, sunlight is everything.
That's a great phrase. Oh God, I like that phrase.
Yeah.
I think you're giving them the air of publicity, personally, but there you go.
Well,
I think
tricky.
It's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Very, very hard thing to do.
Now you need to get on, because you have another contributor. I have a ton of things that I will keep for next week, because
please do.
Please
do. Well, thank you. Lovely to see you.
And
you. I hope the mugs are going well. Oh, excellent. Okay. Thank you as always. Bye.
Bye. See you next week.
Righty ho. You thought we normally finish. I know we normally finish at 1, but today it's just been like monster. Forgive me. I just haven't got the time to read out all the comments. I'm so sorry, but Nick Battle, there you are.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me, sir?
No, I can hear you perfectly. Yes, absolutely. Well, Wow. Oh, I'm loving that gold discs on. That is a room. That is a room, fella. Boy, oh boy, I love that room.
It's my man cave. I love that phrase, sunlight is everything. There's a line.
Chantal is just fantastic.
There's a line from Bruce Cockburn, the songwriter, and he says, you have to kick at the darkness until it bleeds daylight.
Oh my God. That's good.
I like that.
Now, sir, why are you here? We're thrilled to see you. Thank you for being so patient. And in order to have you here, I've extended the show.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Not at all. My pleasure. Phil's at lightweight. Phil had to go. No, he had to go. He really did have to go.
Is it the same problem with the waterworks, or is it something different?
No, that's cleared up now.
Okay, excellent.
It's cleared up. And Sue Hudson, thank you very, very much. Another award. Yeah, we did pick up another award this week. Sue, thank you so much for that lovely comment. Right, Mr. Battle.
Yes,
on we go. On we go. So you're here because?
I'm here to ply my wares and tart myself around and tell you about my new record, The Finish Line. Mm-hmm. Having spent close to, golly, I made my first record when I was 19. I'm now 64, so I may or not be older than you. I'm not sure. But it's one of those things, you go back to what you love as you get older. You go back to your first love. My first love has always been creating. So I think we're quite similar. I think you live to create, communicate, and be compassionate. And that's kind of my raison d'etre on a good day. Okay?
On a good day. Oh, here we are. Chantal, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, Nick. The Villages, which sounds fantastic. It's called Some Kind of Heaven, and it's on Netflix. There we are, everybody. Okay.
Wonderful. So, and having spent a lot of time in the music business and written songs for people and written with other artists and stuff, in my dotage, I've taken to do two things.
Don't say that. I please don't say that. It's not your dotage. It's only if you think it's your dotage. Who have you written for? And before we get on to it, go on. Give some perspective to everybody watching around the world.
I've written for Cliff Richard. I've written for Engelbert, Michael Paul. I've written with Gary Barlow, with Chaz Jankel, with David Grant. I've written for Jane Horrocks for a movie called Bring Me the Head of Mavis Davis, which opened at midnight and went straight to DVD the next morning.
Yeah, I kind of did. Yeah, it was straight at your local charity shop. But I remember the title because I thought it was a lovely title. I thought it was an absolutely lovely title.
Well, it's one of those things that you get a song in a movie and you think, wow, great, it's a big break and it's going to be like Titanic, I can retire. No, not at all.
Yeah, right. You could be the John Altman. You could be the John Altman if it hadn't gone straight to DVD.
But the thing is, Titanic. So I've been writing songs since I was 12, and it's just something I'm passionate about. And the other thing I do, which is really strange, is I take funerals. I'm a funeral celebrant. So, and I fell into that because somebody said to me, and this may surprise you, Russ, you love the sound of your own voice.
No.
You're happy talking to 5 or 5,000. You're a compassionate man. Why don't you help people say goodbye? So I've been doing that for 7 years. And that has been a fascinating journey.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I really, really do. Because you're feeling so emotional. You're saying goodbye to a loved one. And you want that moment to be special, and you don't want it just straight off the shelf of, when someone's never met them and they give some sort of eulogy, whether it be a vicar, a rabbi, or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. They haven't met them. They don't know them at all. Why would they? And it's just this kind of amorphous generality. It's so much better if you can have someone special talking. Well done, you. Great.
Well, I'm passionate about helping people say goodbye in the way that they choose. I remember very clearly when my first wife passed, being held up literally, and those people are carved on your heart. My job now, as I help people through this time, is to cradle their hearts. Frankly, if they said to me, Nick, come in wearing a pink taffeta dress, playing the bagpipes with the rose between your teeth, I would consider it if that's what they wanted. Because daft as it sounds,
I think it's just a little bit too much about you, Nick.
I've had some very bizarre funerals to take, including one where I had to dress up as a cowboy. But that's what the late fellow wanted, and he even left me a T-shirt. I mean, it's an I know. village people take your funeral.
Yes, I was just going to.
Yeah,
Oh,
and frankly, why not? But the thing is this: everybody deserves the opportunity to grieve and say goodbye properly, and my job is to facilitate that. And I don't care about politics, religion, rhetoric, any of that stuff. I just care about helping these people deal with the hardest point of their life.
You used a great word, and I think that's resonating amongst the audience, which is celebrant. I like to think of a funeral, and I've been to far too many, as a celebration. I don't go with dressing. That's just me. I think this is just me being old-fashioned. I think it's slightly disrespectful,
Yeah.
But hey, look, it's not that's just me personally. But it should be a celebration of that person's life.
Yes.
Otherwise, I think their time here is just kind of like a waste. It's like you should be looking back and looking at all the great things and lovely things that they did and the friends that they made and the family that they had, etc.
Well, it's. I agree with you on that. I mean, that's 1 in 700 funerals that I've taken. But
wow, you've done 700.
Yeah, in the last 7 years. Yeah,
wow.
Which is, it's a job that chooses you. You don't choose it. It's.
But you really.
It should be like it should be a vocation. You should only do it if you feel you really want to do it, because it's hard. And you see the best and worst of people, and mostly you see the best. But it's tough. But it has informed my songwriting, which is why I've written an album called The Finish Line, which is all about what matters most in life. You may remember the lovely Robin Williams, the genius that was Robin Williams, in the Dead Poets Society, saying "Carpe diem," seize the day.
Seize the day.
Yeah, and there's a song on the new record called "All We Have Is Now," and it's all about that. Just, you've lost people, I've lost people, and for those who are left behind, it's incumbent upon us to live good lives where we can be good people, compassionate, kind, and gracious. And that's what the record is about. It's called The Finish Line because I dealt with, in the last year, I lost 7 people, but I lost my father too after a 3-year fight with dementia. And you know what it's like. You see this person slowly ebbing away in front of you. And it's about how do we want to finish what's left of our lives. Now, I'm not maudlin. I'm not thinking I'm going to pop my clogs anytime soon. But for you and I, the finishing tape is arguably nearer than it was, say, 30 years ago.
Nick, I have this discussion with Phil. Now, Phil's 35. I'm not, right? And I say the reason I'm trying to do so much is that, unlike you, Phil, whose life is kind of started, although he's extremely accomplished and successful, is I can see the finishing line. So if I had another 20 years, that'd be pretty good going, really, to be honest with you. And I don't know what the hell's going to. Who the hell knows? We never know what's around the corner. It's a random lottery. So I am rushing to try and do as much as I can. And I hear the ticking of the clock, not in a gloomy way, but in a realistic way. And I do. So you've used this phrase, and I've never heard anybody else. It's something that I think about a lot. The finishing line. You can see the checkered flag, and you think, right, I've got to achieve X, Y, and Z for my own well-being, not because I want to leave a legacy. I'm not interested in that. But I think it's how we're going to spend whatever time we are given.
And this is why old people are grumpy. Ever watch an old person in a checkout? If you sat there and you're waiting, there's 5 people in front of you, and they're going, "You're wasting 7 minutes of my life. God knows I've only got 19 years left. For
Christ's sake."
Give me
also,
a break.
You want to point out at the checkout queue, look, do you know what? I know this is going to come as a shock to you, but this isn't a charity. You are going to have to pay for all the crap you've just bought on the conveyor belt. Could you at least have your credit card ready, not trying to find it in the Pliocene era of your handbag? Because
they're there, God love them. Man. They're fumbling, aren't they? They're fumbling.
It's just but it comes as a surprise to them. Oh my God, I've got to pay for it. Oh geez, I better start looking for that, you idiot.
It's in here somewhere, surely.
Yes, it's next to the angle grinder. Next to the angle grinder and the horseshoe.
The head goes in first, and then the body, and then all you see the little pair of feet sticking out the back.
Little legs going like this, back to the back. This is very interesting stuff. You're writing
Yes.
When you started writing very, very, yeah, absolutely. Paul, be safe. That's Paul Claridge. He's got to be safe. Thinking of handing out paper. How the hell are you going to hand out papers in this weather? I don't know. You're going to be blown to Kansas. Has your writing? It's obviously matured, but have the themes that you look at as we get older, have they changed as well?
Yes, I think when as a young man, I was writing for Cliff in the early 80s. I would literally be like a tailor. So I tailor the song to Cliff, the subject matter, the lyrical content, and at the end I'd maybe leave out a high harmony because I know it always put the falsetto in, and that's a craftsman's job. But the best songs come spiraling out of the air. They're like writing books, you know this. It's a download. You get this information and it just pours out, and you put it in there, and you don't know quite where it comes from.
Don't know where it comes from.
You're just
no
happy
idea.
to receive it, right? You're just happy to receive it.
Completely.
And since, the more loss we have in our lives, the more joy we have as well, because we get to appreciate more. And so for me, it fuels a perspective on looking at what I've had. I look back on my life and I think, I don't regret any of it. I would like to have done it better if I could at the time. And where I've been able to make amends, I have done. But it's about the joy of living and celebrating what we have. And people can miss out on that. We spend too much time, and God knows songwriters, we're a miserable bunch of people. We're constantly, with the pandemic, we've been finding even more navel fluff than we had before,
I know.
And but
you've all become Adele.
Please.
At
some point, I'll have a record. It will be called 70, but not for another 5 years.
It'll be called 70, and everybody I've ever dated and didn't like, you're going to get your own track. Fabulous.
It'll be a long record, Russ.
It'll be a very there you go. It'll be a double album.
It'll be worse than
concept album. It can be a concept album.
Perhaps Roger Dean could do the cover. No, it wasn't called Yes Songs, it's called Nick Songs. In fact, and this is the God's honest truth.
That is the line of the week. If you get it, you get it. I'm not going to bother to explain it. It's just a very good gag.
But the next record is going to be a compilation of all my records. It's going to be called No Hits, No Ritz, No Grits, the best and worst of Nick Battle.
Oh, that's very good.
There you go.
That's very, very good. Do you think, though, that it's very interesting, the creative process? Do you think it's your job to entertain or to be totally honest? Because it's interesting how you set out,
I don't set out to entertain. It's kind of a selfish process, actually. I set out to purge my soul, and just it's a bit like a melodic vomitorium, because a lot of songwriters. We have to get it out. Some songwriters like Sting, he'll tell a story. I like telling stories, and there's an art to telling stories in 3 minutes as opposed to.
It's extraordinary. They used to
words.
be when I was growing up, it was very popular, those sort of storytelling, especially country and western songs, their storytelling. And now, not for me. But do you think, and this goes to a theme for mental health as well, is that a lot of mental health is an attitude of mind. It's your mindset. There was the Super Bowl. I'm not interested in American football. I'm not interested in it at all. But it's huge. So I'm not saying if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. Fantastic. I choose not to watch it. So they always have the halftime show, which is incredibly spectacular. Now this year, because the Super Bowl was in LA, it was all basically rappers and hip hop and all that sort of stuff, which I avoided, like trying not to get COVID. It's not for me. But I didn't write anything about it because I know millions and millions and millions of people absolutely love it, and they're hugely successful. I don't get the attitude, Nick, of saying, they should have had Ted Nugent. Christ, they should have had Ted Nugent and this one and that one. I don't think that's good for your mental health. Isn't it better? I guess my question is, isn't it better to say, let the people enjoy it? It's not for me. I can watch something else. I think that just makes you feel better.
Well, it's the word grace, isn't it? It's a word which is underused and undervalued, and it's having the ability
grace.
It's having the ability to let things go. That somebody does something or something appears on television, and you get, oh golly, but do you get busy about it, or
I don't. I switch channels.
Exactly, and you make a choice, and I think as we get older, we become more selective and we're more patient than we used to be. If we haven't learned patience at this stage, then we're never going to learn it. And it's about letting things go. Young men in motor cars. I was that young man. I was that idiot.
I was that guy driving up on the pavement in my pimped up Mini. Of course I was.
Trying to get around the guy in front because he pissed you off. I mean, all that kind of stuff.
I was that idiot. I'm not now. I just mind my own business.
And in which case, then you just kind of let it go. What does make me angry is that they endanger my life as well. Feel free to endanger yours, but don't endanger mine and my passengers. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. So the thing about songwriters, they're generally, in all seem like, I'm friends with Tony Hatch, who is one of the greatest songwriters, I'm going to say, of the 20th century, and still very, very active. He's 80 plus, just a lovely man. Or John Altman, who I'm sure you know John, an amazing sort of chap. They have grace. They seem to be, and very modest. I find, in all seriousness, I find like so many songwriters, you think, you wrote that? Oh my God. And I'm in awe. And they're just like, well, okay, I wrote it, Tony's like that. Tony Hatch has written more stuff than you could shake a stick at. And the most modest, lovely man.
Well, I have another friend called Tony Swain, and Tony wrote all the imagination stuff. Alison Moyet all cried out, Love Resurrection.
God, you're kidding.
And he is one of the most gentle, unassuming people, and also one of the most lovely. After my first wife had passed, he would come and see me once a week, and we just hang out. It's the value of friendship. Absolutely. And again, good friends teach you about grace. And that's a twofold journey, isn't it, from them to us and vice versa. And and I love it when. The truth of the matter is, if people are good, they shouldn't need to shout about it.
They don't need to shout. Their work speaks for them, doesn't it? Well, now, okay, if we want to know more about you, only because I know that when I tell my production team, you've got to slot all this in, and they're going, you've overrun by half an hour, for God's sake. So I don't care. So if people want to find out more about Nick Battle, where do we go?
nickbattleofficial.co.uk. Also, please, you can email me at nick.battle@mac.com. I will respond to you personally.
Wow.
Find me on
who's ever done that, ever.
Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. I'm that media tart.
I admire that straight away. Nick, I would talk to you for hours. We're going to get you back in the future, but my team will be going absolutely potty when they try to shoehorn this into the schedule. Anyway, thank you so much, Nick. We will be back in touch. I know, because there's a lot more to talk about. And thank you for everything that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's nice to get to know you, Russ. Thank you.
Oh, bless. Bye now. Bye-bye. Well, that is it. Yep, we had so many people. We wanted to extend the show. We used to do a 3-hour show. It was kind of too much. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've loved it. So much better without Phil. I'm kidding. Don't tell him I told him that. He'll sulk for weeks if you tell him that. It's been great. Thank you to all our fantastic guests who've been thought-provoking, which is what we really want. Have a lovely weekend. Phil and I will be back Monday, all being well. Survive Storm Eunice. Storm Eunice. Sounds like she should be doing crochet. Until Monday at 12 o'clock. Try and stay out of trouble. Bye, everybody.